home territory. All right, so welcome everyone to this YouTube channel on the Enneagram interviews, and really appreciating that I've got beloved Type 4 Ken here, who's a part of the ancestral line of fours, along with myself. We might be the only two fours on the planet, but yeah, my teacher says 1 in 9 people are fours, which is sad news. But so I'm calling from South Portland, Maine, and I'm the director of the Maine Enneagram Center for Transformation and Change, and just a pleasure to be here. And so here is Ken, and welcome. Good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michael. Thank you for the invitation. Talk about
Absolutely.
all things Forian.
Yes, that's right. And whatever attaches to it, of course. And I had the pleasure of going through one of my CTI trainings with you, and recognized a kindred spirit at that time. So yeah. So what would you like to say about, type 4? What's it like in the heart and soul and skin of a type 4 as you've experienced it?
Yeah, where to start with that? It's funny. I'll share this as I was reading, and every time I read about the experience of 4, um, I'm amazed. But clearly, someone has studied us in depth. I'll say I'll say that because I have such vivid recollections of um, sitting at the kitchen table, for instance, and thinking, sort of variation, like loving my family on the one hand, and also almost always feeling misunderstood, and who in the world is gonna get me, and why can't they understand, and why do I have such a hard time fitting in here, and at times, like, who are these people? So
I can identify for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I have not 1 but 2 degrees in fine arts. I went to undergraduate school, got a bachelor degree in painting and drawing, and
Oh,
then went on to
oh,
get a master's degree in drawing and sculpture.
oh,
So yeah, and
nice.
surrounded by art. So creative expression has always been a key piece of of my life, whether it was, and in all forms. There's been writing, there's been obviously painting, drawing, sculpture,
Mm.
uh, music, songwriting. uh, so a lot of, even as I spent a number of years as a ski instructor, um, in some pretty cool places, and always felt that, the essence of skiing was this unique creative expression.
Yeah, that's right. It's poetry in motion.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
awesome. So when did you discover that you were a type 4?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm guessing it was, I'm thinking somewhere around 2003, 2004, sometime in the early aughts. Sometime in the early aughts. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is when so that particular article I sent you was done by Don Riso, and
Uh-huh.
who ended up being my teacher, and I read that description in 1996, and I felt like somebody had looked down into the well of my soul and just like, how could you know this about me? And it didn't cheer me up. I was like, oh my God. It was such a shock. And even now when I read it, I go, how did he know this? So it was quite a shock for me because I imagined myself to be a lot healthier than I actually was, and then, that's always a shock to realize you're not quite where you thought you were. But so so for you, like, what are some of the things that you've noticed that you've wrestled with? Some of the patterns of the four, like what comes to mind for you?
Oh my goodness. By the way, thank you for sending me that piece, because I had a similar reaction as I was reading it, and also thought, well, thank goodness I'm past that, and thank goodness on a good day, I should say, on a good
Yes,
day,
yeah.
on a day when I'm integrated, thank goodness I'm past that. But there was almost so let's see again where to start. The I think the biggest piece in that, which in being in conversation with other folks who are fours, I've heard a similar experience, is first of all this sense of uniqueness, and not necessarily in a healthy way, by the way. This sense of uniqueness, and in that uniqueness, this notion that, oh, I will never be understood. Like, no one out in the world, no one in the universe is ever going to get me, which, of course, now it seems silly. And by the way, I still notice, when I get really tired, when I'm irritable, if I'm having a tough day, oftentimes that's where I go back to. It's like, oh, I'm just so misunderstood, poor me.
Uh-huh.
um so that's the first, that's one of the ones that stands out. The other is this endless exploration of consciousness. This endless internal exploration,
Mm.
which again, there's a healthy face of that, and then there's the not so healthy face, the notion that um, there's this deeply held secret to life in the universe. And there's an awful lot of people out there walking around who know the secret, but I'm never gonna, and I can say it now with, it's just like, ah,
Uh-huh.
this sense that I'll never, I'll just never get the secret, which again is, as we know, it's kind of, it's nonsense.
Yeah, but what's so interesting is how, for me, compellingly real those states of being were. Like, this is like, I'm not just making this up, folks. This is like real stuff. And I often felt like I may be the only one who understands the depth of the problems here on the planet, and no one will, like, I got the wrong planet. There's a problem here, right? And so I was laughing to myself the other day when I was sort of reviewing the swamps that they seemed like foggy swamps that I would drop into, and that would sometimes be overzealously looking for the secret to the universe and disregarding anybody who wasn't doing that too. Like, I was like sort of a superior, unique being, while the rest of you were kind of shallow. I don't know what your problem is, but there was a sense of I'm the one who's going deep and no one else can go there. So did you ever have any run-ins with that pattern?
Only on days that I both blinked and breathed.
Those are, I hear
Well,
you.
yeah. Well, there is that. I love the way you put it, because there is this, and I know this can be an ego function, but there's also this the way that there's a way that I'm gonna talk about our specialness here, because there's a way that as fours we can elevate it to, an art form, and that is the ping ponging between insignificance, no one gets me and I don't matter, It's like I'm just kind of I'm a dust mote. I am little more than a dust mote in the sea of the universe, and all the way up to, no, you don't understand. Like I can see, I can, like, I've just had a conversation with God, and you're just not listening to me.
It's the agony and the ecstasy,
The
right?
agony and the ecstasy. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. When I'm in a difficult place, not feeling good, that feeling that I'm just a piece of sand on the beach
Yeah.
can be quite painful. And my teacher will say, "Why is that a problem? Sand on the A particle of sand on the beach, that sounds proportionate to the universe. Why is there grief attached to that?" And I said, "I don't know. It just seems like a terrible loss of value, but it's just, it's like it's horrible. Because I'm the smallest, darkest piece that you can't barely see, and the rest of you are happy grains of sand. So that kind of maybe exaggeration on both ends, where which again, that's the joy of having a personality. It goes up and down, and if I'm fortunate, I notice where it's at. I'll say, I wonder where Naylor is today. Oh, he's riding the high horse of self-righteousness. He's pretty darn good at that, right? And so finding a way to notice it. So yeah, so with that, you know one of the things that a lot of folks have said to me is that they have an innate capacity to sort of notice the unnamed suffering of
Mm,
people in their lives. They just have like a intuitive sense of even being able to kind of feel into the broken heart of a human being, and to also have a kind of empathy for the broken heart of the planet, and that their sensitivity, if not navigated well, can set them up for feeling really sad about the planet and life on Earth, and get kind of swallowed by it, and feel like, gosh, I should, if I can see the suffering, I should be able to transform it like that. And so I wonder if that anything that you relate to in your
oh
life.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that feels like, I like that. I love the way you worded it there. Because I can see, as I think back, as I think retrospectively, I can see um, instances of seeing and feeling, um, what was out there. In many ways, what would, the way I would put it now is, being able to experience things because of that sensitivity, because of that empathetic capacity,
Hmm.
being able to see things way over there, out in the world, that were really easy to almost like cloaks, to put on. I could put on the mantle, put on the cloak of this challenge and that disaster, and in ways that were, um, made things that could not possibly be. I'll speak for myself. Made to put on things that I could not possibly take ownership of.
Hmm.
In ways that they almost became mine exclusively, and then that's such a setup, particularly for someone at a younger age. If I think about myself as a kid, or as a teen, or as even as a young adult, um, putting wearing some of those cloaks
Hmm.
that they weighed tons, and then again, the setup is, I've put this on, and now I'm wearing it because I think I have to,
Hmm.
and I can't stand up, under the weight of this thing. So it's a,
Hmm.
now now I'm in this oftentimes helpless combination of helpless and misunderstood state, and you just don't get that I'm carrying this thing, and this is it felt at times like the weight of the world. It happens, it still happens sometimes,
Mm,
um especially in our current circumstances.
absolutely.
um
Yeah.
yeah, political, cultural, etc. um and it's nothing like it was.
Mhm.
It's nothing like it was. But yeah, I think I did that answer the question.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
just to add to it is, so one of the things that fours seem to have inherited is a anti-happiness clause. Like if I start to get happy, I'm going in the wrong direction. My inner critic says, "No, the answer is in the suffering. You just haven't gone enough into the suffering." And so, you know, uh, I know for me, there was a time where if I was joyful for no reason, it's like, oh, this is kind of self-indulgent. There's all this suffering on the planet, and I had some kind of a real misunderstanding around the importance of joy in waking up creativity, intuition, capacity to be with people. But I know early on in a lot of forests, it's like they're like at a grave site grieving humanity in themselves, and it's like let me, I want to be able to pull them away from that, and they go, well, I was there, and thank God there were interventions here and there from the universe that sort of broke through that. So what has been your relationship with that? Anything more you'd want to add?
Well, that's an interesting one for me because I think this is going. I'm going to get to it. This is going to be somewhat of a roundabout answer. So my father put me on. This does tie in. My father put me on skis when I was about 2.5 years old,
Mm.
which I'm endlessly grateful for. I felt guilty about not sticking my own son on skis until he was 4. It's like, oh my God, it's too late. Um, but but there was something about his influence, because whatever he did, he always seemed to have a good time of it.
Mm.
And there was something in there was something, whether it was in the family culture or uh there was something about that influence that I latched onto at a relatively early age, and I can't pinpoint like a date or a specific time, but it was like, oh, you know
Mm.
it's kind of sort of important that you have a good time
Mm.
here.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and now, having said that, when it came to so this is a little bit of each. It's a little bit of like, oh, the fun and the joy is actually really important.
Mm.
And oftentimes the way I would go about approaching it was from a place of of deep drama, of the necessity to sweat and toil and martyr myself in order to pay the bills. So, by the way, I could then have moments of having really good fun. And
Mm.
yeah, and it's kind of funny because when I look at my work life, I mentioned I have 2 degrees in fine art,
Mm.
and I would get jobs that almost ensured that I didn't have any energy left at the end of a work day to do anything creative.
Mm.
So it would hold the joy
Mm.
at bay. So I spent a lot of time and energy in with an awful lot of being kind of weighed down by an awful lot of martyr energy. It's like, oh, look at the effort and toil that I'm putting in order to make a buck and put food on my own table, and therefore I have no time to make art, as an
Well,
example.
it's a sad story. I mean,
Oh yes, it's
you
very
can't,
sad.
and compelling. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, I always feel like, I was graced with some experiences that helped me to see outside of those. But what has what have you utilized? What helps you to not get caught in the patterns as easily, or that gets you out of the patterns when you've been triggered into, whether it's self pity or the darkness or whatever. Like, are there particular things that have been useful for you?
Oh my God, there's a lot of things that have been useful. So one of them is, one of them has been finding work, discovering work that really speaks to me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to go through a list here.
Yeah.
Another one is surrounding myself with, it's funny. I've surrounded myself with communities of people who can see when I'm going there, and either throw me a rope or just grab the hook and pull me off stage.
Awesome. That's a good strategy.
Yeah. It's like intervention. Uh, and who really, it's funny because I don't know how we did this, but somehow or other, well, my wife certainly. I mean, she. I think we would each say that one of the main reasons that our relationship has been as successful as it is a we don't we've managed not to crash and burn on the same day, and the other is that we're different enough and are
Hmm.
able to see each other. It's like, oh, okay, that's that. I recognize that pattern, and we're not going there right now. It's like, what part of you is speaking right now? Because I'm really not that interested in what it has to say. Um, so a little bit about, the community thing, I think, is really is a big one, because I have a great collection of people that I know I can pick up the phone, or I can text them, or I can send them an email. Um, and they're there. So
Yeah.
there's that. So there's a lot of different. It's interesting. I hadn't really thought about this, but there's a lot of different systems that are put in place. The last one I'll mention is making it a point to, just about every day. There are days where I am just spent, and the idea of picking up my guitar, for instance, is like, it's just not going to happen. And I've gotten to the point where I'm fine with that. I know now, versus what I thought when I was an art student. I know now that if I don't go near my chosen mode of expression, that it's not going to vanish off the face of the earth overnight if it's not paid attention to for 24 hours. And there's something about making it a point to, pick up the guitar and play a little bit,
Hmm.
or a lot,
Hmm.
every day,
Hmm.
that that has been used hugely. I think the discovery of music. I didn't really discover music until I was until I was 49.
Hmm.
I'd mess around with it a little bit, but having music in my life, because at the age of, here's the thing that I'm so thankful I didn't discover music at a younger, the way I discovered it. I'm thankful I didn't discover it at a younger age, because I think I could have handed it off to those darker parts of what makes me a four,
Yeah.
as like, oh my God, it's either rock stardom or nothing at all. It's like, no, as a reasonable adult, there's no good reason to play an instrument except for the fact that it provides joy.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. Well, so you mentioned a number of things that certainly have worked for me or helps me, is having people who can wave the red flag when I'm in one of my distortions. I've often said I'm glad there's only one type 4 in our house, because they would drive me crazy, because of their mood swings. And we often say, type 4s can go from a really healthy place to an awful place in a split second. They have
Yep.
and then they can also get resurrected. So that said, I was thinking one of the things that popped up for me, and you mentioned a little bit around, is this idea. I had this notion I was going to find a soulmate who was finally perfectly attuned to me, and of course could appreciate my gifts and would, pay the bills and also be awesome in bed. And that there was this person, right? And I kept getting disappointed, like it's just another human being, just another. And then finally, it occurred to me that that person does not exist. That that perfect attunement was something that was a story inside of me,
Hmm.
and that freed up my partners to relax a little bit. I've been with my wife for 25 years, which is a blessing from on high, but she's a type 2, so she has great range of patience and forgiveness, and I do apologize a lot. What is one of my friends said? If you haven't apologized this week, Michael, you're not paying attention. And I said, well, there's a little bit of truth there. Once a week, but that perfect attunement thing. How did you sort with that and start to come to a place of more acceptance around it? I mean, anything come to mind for you around that?
Yeah, yeah. There's a few things. So I love that the whole perfect attunement. It's no pressure there to, but
No.
well, and that's part of and I'm trying to think also where this came from, because I don't ah, I know the source of it eludes me right now, but I remember learning so it might have been through some of the work that I did with lucid living over the years, which was amazing work. And the one of the things that I think I learned this there was the notion that you can't um, the there's this Hollywood notion which I think we fall for, big time. The culture falls for it, but I think there's a way that we fall for it hard, as far as this notion that there's like there's this there's this perfect person out there, and they are going to deliver all the goods,
Yeah.
emotionally, intellectually, sexually, and by the way, they also know how to shop and cook. And,
One can only hope.
but yeah, yeah. Um, and the you know the so there was so learning that, really learning and having it land, it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, there's no one singular relationship, whether from a friend standpoint or from a romantic relationship standpoint. There's no one singular relationship that could ever possibly carry all the weight, of that, that ideal avatar of epic, perfect, happily ever after, relationship. And when that really landed, like, oh, okay, you know that just took all it took not only did it take the pressure off of my, the relationship with my significant other, but it also took the pressure off of my friendships. And I was lucky. I was blessed as a man, to always have in my life, um, other at least one other man
Mm,
that I could, perhaps even go years without speaking to, but
mm,
then also be able to pick up the phone and say, hey,
mm,
here's what's going on, and know that there would be an ear there.
mm,
But I remember having at one point, one of these men, um, who was a roommate for years. But we would sit down and we would have conversations about our, how we were doing in our relationship as friends, and about our expectations and about our assumptions. Um, and uh, there was, he was also, deep into personal growth work, which kind of set the table for that, kind of
okay.
set a place for that. But the key thing was, recognizing that, oh, okay, I I have these very romantic expectations about what ideal relationships are supposed to look like,
Mm.
and they're just not realistic. You know, they saddled any given relationship
Mm.
with too much. So that was a very long-winded answer, but and that's
Yeah.
and by the way, there are times where I still, I think about early in our marriage where we're going to be 30 years married as of this July.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, and but there were moments early in our relationship where, and it was a little bit of the, why don't you get me, sort of thing, and thank goodness didn't put too much stock
Yeah.
in those notions.
Well, I was thinking one thing that really, along these lines, that really supported me was I wasn't aware of this, but one of my mentors, one of my male guides, when another relationship had burnt out, and he said, you drowned your partner with your needs. You just smother. It says, until you learn to be nurtured by men, you'll never have a stable relationship with women. You've got to learn how to allow men to nurture you and support you. And that changed everything. Just he said, many of the things you take to your partner should really be taken to men, and learning to notice the difference. Because as a type four, some type fours say that when they grew up as kids that they often felt responsible for their mother's well-being, and sometimes sort of falling into the coach role depending on the health or unhealth of the family, and that had certainly become a habit for me, and seeking the other thing. One of my teachers says that you keep throwing that creative anima onto the woman and expecting her to fulfill that rather than developing your own creative capacity. If you start working on your creativity, that compulsion to swamp your partner and suck her dry and to get all your needs met will also get a lot quieter, and you'll be more grounded and level headed. And those two things were huge for shifting kind of where my attention went towards the soulmate who was failing me once again. I just have to try harder with you. You're kind of a slow learner, and I'm so deep, and you're so shallow. Even the angels weep on your behalf. And so there was something about those two things that started to quiet that chorus of inner critics saying, she's not the one. You got to go look again. So anyway, I just that's been very powerful for me. So, anything that connects for you on that, or I know the creativity is really powerful in your life, and the men. That's certainly been. I've been in men's work a long time myself, and it's such a. Well, I guess I just feel really blessed that I found men and their friendships, because I'd still be stalking the next soulmate, and then being disappointed. So I'm blabbing along here. Anything popping up for you that you'd like to share? I'll just ask another question.
Well, yeah, I just want to underline what you said about I think about both of them. Um, by the way, culturally, just on a bigger picture, to the cultural, to the artistic, or to the creative piece first. Um, one of the things that I've learned that I think is worth sharing is to unbox creativity. And when I say unbox creativity, to recognize that, when we're really talking about creativity, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the studio making art. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're making music, writing the next great play, the great American novel, whatever it happens to be. There's as many creative pathways as there are human beings. I think I'm of the
Mm,
opinion there are as many creative pathways
mm,
as there are
I
human
like that.
beings. Yeah, and for some, it will be, it will be more in the arts. For others, it might be creativity, expressing their creativity through disruption of systems in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
or the next great piece of software,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
engineering projects, etc. There's creativity lives everywhere,
Mm.
and that's a really important piece. And it's just a matter of finding,
Mm.
of like I said, unboxing it and finding it, and also letting go of the pressure to do. Any creative will ever will who's any creative worth their salt will tell you that the road to doing great work begins with doing completely awful work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And yep,
Yeah.
and progresses through mediocre
Yeah.
onto yeah, okay, and then finally, and it takes time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that yes to the creative piece. In terms of them, oh man, I can't say enough about, underline in dark ink what you said about being in community, doing men's work,
Mm.
having men in your life. It's funny, I got a text from the partner of a man who was in my last last men's program, and she said, I don't know what y'all are doing, but all I know is he's showing up very, very differently in our relationship, and it's
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's not about my work so much as it is about it speaks to the bigger picture of
Mm.
men being in connection with other men, learning to develop that open-hearted trust.
Yeah.
And I do mean learning, not blind faith, not blind trust, but really letting themselves, discover that, yeah, I'm safe when I'm with other men, and
Mm.
I can unburden those things that I've been wanting to bring to my relationship that
Mm.
don't find a place to land there, oftentimes find a place to land in the company of other men, and it just opens, it's what you described. It's like,
Yeah.
it takes the pressure off of the relationship.
Yeah. I think what that other thing that really stood out for me in terms of that learning about men was just how many wonderful men are in the world, and men get a pretty bad rap. It seems like the 2% who are really unhealthy and broken become like the story of men, right? But there's a lot of gorgeous, beautiful men who big-hearted, loving, creative, and I try to speak to that regularly because there's a tendency to just look at the most maligned, perverted one and say these men they caused. So, but that's what a gift that is, to also feel like it's okay to get support, that I don't have to do it alone. And as my teacher often says, he says, first off, the longer you go along your spiritual path, when you're in a tough place, the better your uh, bullshit is. So it's good to have some other men around, but also you're going to need men as you go further, because there's sometimes more difficult things that you're just going to need them for periods of time because you haven't navigated there, and that's been certainly true for me. So he said to me, try to keep at least 3 men in your life who are more advanced than you, because you will, because you're human, your ego is sneaky and it will take you out. But if you've got them, they can grab you by the shoulder and come back, and they can re-educate you. And so that's certainly been a strategy for me. So yeah. So anything you might want to add, or something you want to go to that I haven't talked about yet?
Just a big yes.
Awesome.
Just a yeah, just a yeah to that. Just a big yeah, yes, that.
I like that. All right. Beautiful. So, I noticed when I was growing up as a kid that I seemed to be more emotionally sensitive to hurt than other people. and which drove my father crazy. But my mother was very nurturing, so I didn't feel wiped out by it. But what was true for you in terms of your emotional sensitivity?
Yeah, I was told, yeah, I was often told that I was too sensitive, too sensitive. Um, as a kid, one never thinks to ask, well, in what ways?
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes,
and where can I go to find the data on the line
yes,
between aware, sensitive, and where's the red line there in terms of
yeah,
sensitive? Um, uh, uh, so that of course the impact of that was further further separation, in the sense that it's like, oh, it's like, okay, there's something inherently wrong with me,
yeah,
back
yeah.
to that. um and and the the again, as a teenager I had I'll share this. I thank her to this day, Pamela. Where actually I know where she is. We're still in touch. We're still dear friends.
Wow.
But my first real girlfriend.
Mhm.
um I haven't asked her where she falls on the Enneagram, but I'm curious about it. um but there was a place there in my relationship with her, where both my sensitivity and my creativity had a whole lot of room
Mm,
to breathe. So in many ways, that relationship was a place of respite
mm,
for me. And I
mm.
was never told there that I was too sensitive.
Yeah.
um uh, uh, there's a reason that we we weren't lifelong partners, but that's a story for another time. And thank goodness, we remain close friends.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was tough. It was tough sledding there, because as I discovered later on, uh, the my emotional sensitivity, my emotional awareness, my emotional literacy, flexibility, fluency, all those things, learning to allow without identifying,
Mm,
key piece, I think, for many of us fours is, okay, I'm having this emotion, which is very
mm.
different than, oh my God, I am this emotion.
Yeah. That's a big shift. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge shift. But
Yeah.
really learning that first of all, there's no such thing as a good or bad emotion. There's simply emotion.
Yeah.
And that the sensitivity is, in so many ways, um, for lack of a better way of putting it, it really is a quote unquote a superpower.
Yeah.
It's, okay, the capacity to read a room, or the capacity to
Mhm.
check in with what's going on with another person.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've had this experience, but oftentimes, people will just start. There's a permission there,
Hmm.
which is important to learn to set boundaries around, of course. But there's
Hmm.
a permission there. I've had people who I knew in a peripheral way. I remember um, meeting the husband of a friend who lived just a couple doors away. She was going through uh, a bout with cancer. She's well now. She's
Mm.
been cancer
Oh,
free for years.
awesome.
But he was facing that. And at one point, he had just brought his daughter to the school bus stop, same bus stop as my son, and he just started talking to me. And he just shared everything that was going on with him in facing
Mm.
his wife's cancer.
Mm.
And this has happened several times in my life. And at one point he says, I've never said a lot of this to anyone. I'm like, great, you know. And we had a nice hug, and then I don't remember that we talked a lot after that, because I think there was something there that maybe, and I could make up all sorts of stories that kind of vulnerability was a little too much for him. And in that moment, he was able to let go of a lot of what he had been carrying around. So there is something to there's a magic to the sensitivity.
Mm,
I think when it's understood, when it's managed, when we as fours can put clear boundaries in place and understand that, oh, just because I'm able to listen to you, I don't have to take that on.
yeah, yeah, that's certainly been a big one for me because I would drink it all in.
Yeah.
It was like that's how I thought a compassionate person worked, and then there'd be two sick people talking to each other rather than a helper and someone who's being compassionately present. So yeah, it's that sensitivity. It seems like it's kind of one of the assignments for type 4 is what do I do with this energy of sensitivity and
Yeah.
so that I become skillful and mindful and can use it well rather than have it use me. So it's kind of like a creature almost. It just like is that sensitivity can be quite for me when early on was kind of compulsive. Like anybody was hurt and my heart would hurt too, and of course that's exhausting. And so yeah, it's quite. But I think it's true until that until one becomes conscious enough to work with it in a useful way. Oversensitive meant I was just sort of taking in too much, or of course, you know, if I'm upset and somebody didn't get it, I just guess I have to need to magnify it because they're now it's really big, and I may have to print it on your forehead. I'm sorry, but learning boundaries that's been big for me too. So another question, and just stop me if I'm stopping you and jump in, but
No, you're good.
the issue of beauty, like fours
Uh,
often say, oh man, they are adore beauty, find beauty in all sorts of things, and there's like it's food for their soul, etc. What's been true for you?
I think that's very true. I think that's very true. Yeah, I'm looking for, again, there's, from artistic expression to finding uh the one of the things that I started doing just this year was I'm noticing all of these native uh plants volunteering around my yard. um as we say, we don't have a lawn, we have yard. um and what's cool about it is that what I love about it is that there are these native plants that are popping up, and they're gorgeous. And I started taking pictures of them and posting them on social media. um there is something about finding whether it's whether it's the large beauty, a gorgeous sunset, an amazing vista, that sort of thing, a great work of art, um, or smaller bits like these very dear, these precious little native wildflowers that are popping up around the yard.
Hmm.
There's something about allowing, again, there's a consciousness. I think there's a, when it's leveraged, and not to put it under the weight of, oh, I must be conscious of, because there's part of the beauty thing is that, if you will, is that the the way I hold it is, those moments are, beauty is a way of accessing delight, and from an emotional standpoint, it's like, oh, you
Hmm.
know, I posted this. I can't remember, Lincolnus, I think it's called, this incredible bright, boom, bright flower, tiny little thing, maybe an inch and a half, yeah, inch and a quarter in diameter of the flower. Um, but being able to catch those moments of delight, a brightly colored bird, or hummingbirds, hummingbirds, for instance. It's like they
Mm.
come and they go, and it's just like, wow. Um, wow. All of it. Yeah, there is something about making the space and allowing those moments of beauty that uh it's just so refreshing.
Yeah. Well, I notice it a lot when, and I'm sure you do too, that in, working with people in Enneagram workshops, it's like they're, as people relax, their innate beauty seems to just sort of unfold. And it's like, it's so gorgeous and beautiful. And each person is so precious and unique. And it's like, I just feel just lit up by it. It's like I'm getting food for my soul. Can we do this for the next 5 days? This is like so amazing. Because when I go back to my default, I will be complaining about the ordinariness around me. But for now, I feel like I'm being visited by God and the goddess. So, yeah, I often notice that as I relax too, I just suddenly they just begin to transform, and it's such a treat and a pleasure. So, yeah. Well,
I'm shaking my head in violent agreement with you.
all right. Well, we got a couple more minutes. If you got to cut off, let me know. But I wanted to just always bring up one of the Achilles heel that I worked with for a long time is the subject of envy. Like
Ah,
fours seem to have been born with an innate capacity to experience envy, depending on how healthy they're feeling. I know from myself, it's like I have an inner critic who sends me messages around envy, once or twice, uh, or 3 times a day, where all of a sudden someone will be walking by and I'll feel envy. I don't even know this person. I don't know if they're suicidal, but something about them triggers. You have something that I didn't get, and my heart feels devastated. And in the past, that was, I believe that movie. It's like a movie would come by and I would insert myself, and then I would grieve for the next day and find more people who were enviable. And today, when I'm awake, I go, oh, there's the envy. Well, thank you for sharing. I almost forgot about it. It's been 6 hours. Thank you. But I wonder how you have experienced that creature of envy.
yeah, it's it's been there. It's been there. It I'm looking for it 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 it, I came face to face with it, and I think in a program that I was doing a number of years ago. And it showed up in the form of jealousy and envy. They're they're kissing cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And it really showed up as getting and I have a vivid recollection of exactly when I recognized it. uh I was on vacation sitting on a beach at the Jersey Shore. um and it had to do with a friend of mine, a friend of mine. And um and in the environment that we were in, I was able to have a great conversation with her, um and share what was going on, and in a way that really took the charge out of it and normalized it. And it and that moment kind of I think went a long way toward healing the envious one. And I still, so similar to what you described, it still shows up now and again. I'd be lying if I didn't say that it showed up every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
And I also I've learned to recognize when it's like, okay, here it comes, here it comes. And it's sort of like, hmm, here you, I imagine it as like a small furry creature. Now it's just like, oh, aren't you fascinating pretending to be 50 feet tall? It's like,
Good. Ah, cool.
I love that about you. Here, go have a, it's like, go have a carrot. You know?
Sounds like you've learned to tame it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've mostly, I'd say mostly learned to tame it again. And this is a really important thing I think to know is that all of these patterns, because they are the way they are, and you mentioned this when in the last conversation you and I had, it's important to remember also that so many of these patterns are deeply set neural pathways.
Mm, yeah,
So it's not like they come out of nowhere
yeah,
anymore anyway. They're
yeah.
deeply set neural pathways, and when I'm tired, when I'm having a when I've had more than my daily allotment of frustrations, or something else has kind of knocked me off balance,
Mm,
then there's more space for them to come in, and they do occasionally grab me and have me for a few days. I think the one that we haven't touched on, that's a trap for many of us who proudly wear the Ford diagnosis badge, is is the uh the holding on to a slight or a piece of history, or
oh,
the
yeah,
the the replaying the grudge worthy the
yeah,
event over and over and over again, and
yeah,
wanting
yeah.
to go back in time and fix that sucker.
And because I'm creative, I might even add things to it, right? That
Oh, big time.
that maybe didn't even happen, but it's in the loop now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
The re
because a lot of drama is always better than a little.
that should be a bumper sticker, For type fours, a lot of
Yeah.
drama is always better than a little. I like that. Yeah, that replay mode, and that's really interesting because I know I would for until I learned something about it, and I think learning to meditate helped a lot in terms of
Mm,
not sort of watching it and joining the movie, but that boy oh boy, there was like three or four things. I mean, my poor parents, I must have revisited them and their ineptness as parents for years until I had something that kind of shocked me out of it. But it's so believable in the moment. It feels like this is the truth. This is the truth. And it's like, no, it's just a machine that's going around inside your thought stream. So yeah, that's a powerful one, and
yep.
not easy to get on sort of disidentified from. Can take a while.
Yeah. Yeah. That I would have to say, and again, thank goodness they don't happen often. Otherwise, I'd be, making lists all day long. Um, but though that if I were to point to the what's my specific Achilles heel,
Hmm.
as in my brand of four, it's that if I feel like I've been slighted or wronged in some way, or
Hmm.
uh you know
Hmm.
the the that yeah that's one that I still have some growing to do on, to say the
Yeah,
least. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that sensitivity of being hurt or misrepresented or treated badly, for those kind of things really hit me hard,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, but I may never talk to you again for the rest of your life. And that cheers me up. I don't know why. So there's room for growth there for sure.
Yeah.
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 And anything else you might want to add before we end? Like I when I think of like what would be good words of wisdom for the type four, it's like, well, read this book because there's not one thing I could really tell you. But anything come to mind for you in terms of you got a 15-year-old or 25-year-old struggling with that the jungle of the four that stands out?
Yeah. Yeah, let me think on that. It's a great question. I think well, to the fours or to the people who are in the four who have fours in their world.
that's that's a whole nother world right there.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
they're
yeah.
a pretty clamoring group saying, "Could you help us, please?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, either one, whatever feels
Yeah,
strong.
I think to those are recent who have recently discovered their own fourness, I think it's really useful to look at um well to first of all to study up, to work with someone like yourself, by the way,
Mhm.
um who's well versed in the who's well versed in the world of the Enneagram.
Mhm.
um Find a trusted agent in that regard, from a
Mhm.
coach, from a course standpoint, from an educational standpoint. It's kind of one of the early steps of reaching for help, if you will.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
men,
Mhm.
absolutely find a men's group, find a men's class, find a learn that, be in the absolutely be in the company of other men, whether they
Mhm.
are fours or not, but men who are doing their own work.
Yeah.
Because you'll find that your unique experience, sorry to say, is not all that unique. And that, yeah.
It's still unique, but not that unique.
It's still unique, but not that unique. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that because taking the grips off some of that uniqueness is as scary as it might seem, because it can feel like letting go of the side of the pool when you're not quite sure you know how to swim yet.
Yeah,
But
great image.
yeah, and to learn that there's freedom and that you can swim there,
Mm,
that's huge. And stay, part of that is also learning to stay,
mm,
regardless of what happens, to stay with it for a while.
mm,
um just know that there's an awful lot of ways to learn more about yourself
mm.
that create bridges of connection rather than walls of separation.
Yeah.
And any opportunity to find one of those and step into it
Mm,
is going to go a long way to taking some of the pressure. And by the way, the loneliness away, because we can, Lord knows we can go to lonely places
mm.
and they're not helpful.
Yeah.
No. And I want to say one more thing there,
Mhm.
and this it relates to a question I asked you, about the natural world, is the learn the difference between solitude and loneliness, because there's magic and connection in solitude.
Mm,
The being out on the beach and watching an amazing sunrise or an amazing sunset, being in the mountains, being
mm,
in the natural world, and being able to, again, in an open-hearted sort of way, there's a sense of belonging that I think, for most people, but there's something about it for those of us who, again, wear the four badge. There's something about it's like, oh, you know, it's hard to be out in the not it's hard to be out in the natural world and not feel like one belongs.
yeah. That's
You
painful.
know? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so that's really beautiful, beautiful advice. And like myself, noticing when the loneliness I'm experiencing, that somehow I'm deepening and making it worse by not reaching out.
Yep.
And solitude is I'm in a state of relaxed attention, appreciating the moment and the stillness. And loneliness is I'm headed towards, you know, the mines of Mordor and Moria, and maybe even going, oh, this feels so bad, it feels good. How could that be, right? Well, that's a sign. Wake up, wrong direction. So I wonder if you have time to say a little bit about the work you're doing, or anything that you'd like to add before we we close this.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
So I've been coaching now for so here's a little bit about the work I do. I've been coaching now for geez, 21 years, and my specialty happens to be working with men.
Mm.
You know, and my specialty is working with leaders, disruptors, men who know that they have an impact to make. They're probably a little bit tired of the way, or a lot tired of the way things are. I think of them as ne'er-do-wells for all the best reasons. Like, yeah, I want to mix it up a little bit, and I want to be having conversations that grow me and deepen my experience. So, you know, it's not their first rodeo in terms of doing work
Yeah,
on
and
themselves. And you know, in that same vein, I run a program a number of times a year called IAM, which stands for the Integrated Adult Man,
oh,
and it's
cool.
yeah, and it's a beautiful walk through our development as
Mm.
men in this culture,
Oh,
where uh, we get to meet our inner child again. You know, the one that's alive in us now, even if he's been voted off our island. We
yeah.
get to meet the inner adolescent again.
Mm.
Pardon me. We get to meet the goddess.
Hmm.
We get to meet all of these different aspects of ourselves again, and we also get to look at and dismantle the messages that we've received, whether through family, through culture, through educational institutions, you know, that have served to separate us from ourselves. So
Mm.
it's a beautiful, fun,
Awesome.
intense,
Awesome.
rigorous, yeah.
Awesome.
Have it, yeah. And I have two programs. I don't know when this is going to air, but I have two cohorts beginning in September. I always have new cohorts on. If one started, there's always going to be another one within the next 6 months.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, and they can
Yeah.
find that information is available on my website. And yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds awesome. Sounds really, really
it
beautiful.
is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, good for, well, so gosh, well, thank you so much, Ken. I just really appreciate this time with you and all the beautiful sharing, and it's just been delightful and fun, and so yeah, I just want to thank you. And this will probably be aired a couple hours from now. I'll send you a copy, and you know, I hope to stay in touch with you.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks. It's always a delight to speak with you, Michael. This
you
is great.
too.
Thanks so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. Many blessings, and I hope to see you soon.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye now.